I only say that because there are thousands of kids just like this all over the place, particularly in poor and working class communities, that they have so much potential, but it goes untapped. It goes not wasted, but what? I don't know. It just, nobody gives them the benefit of their potential. And so that's what I decided that that's what I was going to do. I was going to become an advocate for those kind of kids. And so I focused a lot of my attention on helping poor working class kids. And my whole life I started off by telling you about the linkage and poverty and all those issues. That's how I measured myself as a politician. How many people did I help climb out of poverty to become into the middle class? I mean, most of these buildings here, if you look around at a lot of these buildings here, they were built when I was mayor. But I don't really, I don't care if my name is ever associated with any of them, the Boston Garden or any of these buildings. Doesn't matter to me. What does matter is the people who worked in there. Suffolk and BU and BC, all these universities that were built, the medical facilities, Mass General Hospital, most of those were built, not originally, but expanded on when I was mayor. The people that it's helped, the people that worked there, the people who got an education there, the people who benefited from these, and different programs. So poverty has been the program that I've most been interested in helping deal with that, and that's why it doesn't get a lot of attention. But I was just saying, I don't think you were in here when I started talking, but there's a story in the paper just yesterday. It's a guy named Kevin Peterson, a black fella who's a friend of mine, wrote a story in the Herald. I'll send it over to you. And then there was a story by Deanne somebody that wrote a story in the Globe, and then I talked about how the gap is growing between the wealthy and the poor, big time in Boston, big time. But it dropped dramatically, more so than any city in America when I was mayor. Now, I'm not waiting around for anybody to make that public or give me any credit for it. If you want credit in politics, it doesn't happen unless you pay for it yourself in a paid political commercial. But it's there for history, for people like yourself to see it. And I only point that out is because don't let anybody tell you policies don't matter. Policies do matter. You can make a difference in government, academic, anything you do, you can make a difference. Just don't go along with the status quo. Don't just go along with what everyone else does. Create your own rules.
So one of the other issues that we saw during your political tenure was busing, obviously.
Yeah.
So what was your initial reaction to busing, and then what did you do in response, or were you able to do anything in response?
Well, the law was passed when I was in 1965, I guess, the state's racial imbalance law. And it was the state racial imbalance law. It was back and forth. There were all kinds of debates up at the state legislature whether it should be repealed. And so I came in like 1971. This is before busing. But what had happened was the case had already been going through the courts. It was pending before the courts. It went to the state court, then it went to this. So it was really out of the political field at the time, except that the state's racial imbalance law was a challenge, that there was an effort to repeal it. But it wasn't the state racial imbalance law that brought the busing decision down. It was a federal district court judge, Judge W. Arthur Garrity. Now at the time I was, what was this, 1973, I guess 74, right? the, so it was in the federal courts. My point of view was that, you know, because of my association with the black community, I was a street worker. When I got cut by the Celtics, I got a job as a street worker, and I was assigned to Ward 14, which is the black area of Boston. So I had 160 families, 160 kids on probation, and all of them were black. And I did that for 5 years, so I really got to know the area very, very well. In addition to playing basketball there, I was a street worker there, probation officer there. So I knew all the families. I saw the schools, and I also did some teaching too in the schools, public schools. The schools were horrendous in the black area. They were also horrendous in South Boston. When I went to South Boston, I think I'm the only mayor that graduated from public schools, Boston, in, I don't know, 70 years or something. When I like biology and I like science, but we had, like, in our biology class, there were only 25 microscopes, and 13 or 14 of them had been in disrepair for like 10 years. So, you know, if you wanted to do some research in biology or chemistry, you had to wait in line. It was not practical. And the other thing was that, like, these windows like this, you had to keep your jacket on when you were in classroom. It was so cold during the winter. So the conditions were, and even when we played, I got a big scar here in my leg. Sliding into second base, I got like 40 stitches because there was a broken beer bottle on the field. That's how bad these facilities were. And so the black parents in Roxbury, South End, you know, they were legitimately complaining that the conditions for their children were awful, were pathetic. And now the conditions where I went to school were equally bad, but they assumed, you know, that our schools were better, and we assumed their schools were better. And as a result of all our schools, both our schools were horrible physical conditions. The school committee was elected by 5 members, all 5 of them political, all elected at large. And so they were accountable to the at-large city council, I mean the people of the city. And they also, where they get their money, they got most of their money from the unions and special interests, people who do business with the city, political people and so forth. So there's really no advocacy at all whatsoever, no voice for the parents. People are all working, like my mother worked all night, father worked as a dock worker. He's in the hospital for 5 years. But so you wouldn't get that kind of a voice, a powerful voice coming from black or white parents. So it was a political football, the whole thing, the busing. So finally, it went to the court, and the court was hearing black politicians say, this is good, we want this busing plan. And you had white politicians say, you're not going to have any busing plan here as long as I'm, Louise Day Hicks being one of them. She was the leader of it. And so there was an impasse, just a complete political impasse. And the parents had, black or white, had no really say in the matter. There wasn't one meeting by any of the people who came in with this plan in South Boston. Not one single meeting, not one single parent ever sat down with anybody to discuss perhaps the most important educational decision that was going to be made in the history of Boston. Never one single meeting. There might have been 1 or 2 in Roxbury in the black area, but a handful of people, handful of parents attended that. So the point being is that there was just no input whatsoever by the people of the city of Boston into this decision. So the judge now, he